Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod to talk about MSU's return to Big Ten play with a surprisingly tricky game in Lincoln, Nebraska against the Huskers. Certainly wasn't a game that anyone had circled on their calendar before the season began as an especially challenging game. You had the Huskers predicted, I think, 15th in the Big Ten, but they've gotten off to the best start in program history.
You're going to remind me of that one?
Well,
all year long. I wasn't
I
alone.
will remind you.
I think they were picked 14th in the official poll.
I only say that because I think that's kind of where most people expected Nebraska to be. I don't think many people expected them. Certainly, very few expected to be maybe 2-0. Maybe you could imagine a win against Illinois, but not to really what they've done this so far. So the one caveat is Rod and I are recording this game before Nebraska has played their final non-conference game against New Hampshire. So our records are not going to be entirely accurate. I think I have 12-0 on the screen. We expect to be 13-0. We're also not going to have to assume that our statistics will be exactly correct. So we're going to be off a little bit.
Good as of what is it? December 29th heading into 30th.
December 29th heading to 30th. We will finish this for sure on the 30th. That just shows you our commitment to you guys. So of course it's going to be Fred Hoiberg. This is his best season. It is going to be somewhat lucky in the sense that Michigan State is going to be having a true road game, but without students, although I think it probably won't affect things too much. It won't be maybe quite as raucous as it can be there in that, whatever the name of their field house is, I can't remember. Hoiberg is in his seventh year.
I think.
Pinnacle Bank. That's I think what it is. You're right. Yeah. Yep. That sounds right. So he's in his seventh season. He's had an NCAA tournament bid for Nebraska, which is not super unusual. Nebraska has made the tournament. They've never yet won. Eventually they're going to pull it off. Maybe this is the year that will happen. But this definitely seems like the best team that he's had there. Although we expected it to be a lot sooner than this, but COVID came in too. I mean, this weird stuff's been happening. The whole transfer portal thing. I mean, the whole game changed. And so it's a lot of stuff that he's had to deal with. And so anyway, to place Nebraska where he probably doesn't have the resources. But Nebraska this year, as far as the metrics go, they're 22nd overall in KenPom, 35th on offense, 26th on defense. So solid team both ways. On offense, Nebraska shoots the ball shoots twos really well. They're 10th in shooting twos. They're 11th in turnover percentage, so they value the ball. They don't do anything else really great. They're not good offensive rebounding. They're 277th offensive rebounding. They don't get to the foul line very often. They're 309th. They take a lot of threes. They're 19th. We just saw Michigan State take on Cornell, who takes an extraordinary amount of threes. I think they were 9th in amount of threes per twos. Nebraska's not too far behind. They're 19th. But they only shoot 34.9% compared to what Cornell was 42. So that puts them 123rd in the country, much worse than Michigan State, I'll point out, which we may not have expected after a few games in the season. So anyway, that's the offensive standpoint, and that's sort of where Nebraska is. I mean, I don't know, maybe you just want to talk about Nebraska in general for this year. I mean, because now they are undefeated, but they have not played super high caliber teams outside of their upset win in Champaign when they won. I don't know if that was an overtime, but that was his last second shot, I think. Was it 83-80?
It was. It was the last second shot by, I believe, by Jamarcus Lawrence off penetration and a kick out from Sam Hoiberg. The schedule is not bad. You're right that's the one that really sticks out. But taking a quick look at who else they played.
I mean, they beat Creighton, but Creighton is not as good this year as
they're
usual.
Not as good, but they blasted them. They beat them by 20.
They destroyed them. And I think it was in Omaha, I think.
No, it was in Lincoln. It was a home game.
It was in Lincoln, okay.
They beat Wisconsin by 30.
Yeah.
In Lincoln. Now, you could say, well, Wisconsin's not as good as we normally see them, and I think that's thus far has proven to be true, but they beat them by 30.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
They beat Kansas State by a point. They beat New Mexico, who's a top 70 team right now, by 12. And they beat Oklahoma, who's almost a top 50 team, by 6, all on a neutral floor. So this is a legit team.
Right.
Do not think that any of this is smoke and mirrors. The fact that they went into Champaign, a notoriously tough place for anybody to win at, and won that game, that alone should tell you that this is a real team. I think that one thing you touched on that I'm going to push on a little bit, though, is Michigan State's good fortune with this game and not having students back. You're right in that it'll still, I would expect it to be sold out, and I would expect the crowd to be into it, precisely because this is, and I don't think this is hyperbolic in the least, this is the most important game Nebraska basketball has played since they joined the Big Ten. I think that's clear cut. Now, that doesn't mean it remains that. If they keep winning, there'll be more important ones as they go. But right now, they are undefeated overall and in the league. They are playing a top 10 Michigan State team in their gym. It is easily the biggest game Nebraska has played in since they joined the league. There's not a lot of games to choose from, by the way. You could argue they've only made the NCAA tournament twice since they've been a Big Ten member. Once under Tim Miles, once under Fred Hoiberg. Now, you could say, I'd have to go back to refresh my memory of those seasons to say, well, did they have kind of a make or break win or two down the stretch that got them into the tournament? Maybe, but it's still, I would still dispute it. So you're talking about a game that is that big for them. To not have the students there, however good that crowd is going to be, and I expect it to be good, it's not as good as if they had their students there.
Right.
So doesn't mean that Michigan State, now the tables have turned and Michigan State's got an advantage. No. You're still on the road. It's still going to be a tough environment, all that. I'm just saying, given the circumstances, if you had to choose how to play it, you'd rather not have their students there. But it's a huge deal for them. I mean, this is going to be a game that if they can win it, it is going to solidify them, at least for the time being, as a team with legitimate aspirations to be at the top of the conference, with legitimate aspirations to be looking for a high seed in March, all of those things.
Yeah, right.
Now, if they lose it, it doesn't eliminate those things from happening, but you understand what I'm saying. This is a validation game for them. Whereas for Michigan State, I mean, we all know it's an important game, but Michigan State plays, 6 or 7 of these every year. Every year.
Already played a couple.
Yeah. At least 6 or 7. So it's different, but you just have to see how that cuts. It could be that because it is so important in Nebraska, they come with a little extra juice and we got a problem on our hands. Or it could be that, guys who aren't used to being in this position kind of get swallowed up by the moment occasionally.
Yeah.
That happens too. So we'll see, but I'm glad the students are not there. I think that's a positive for Michigan State. You mentioned their offense, and they're not great across the board. They've got some real weaknesses. The fact they never get to the foul line, that they don't offensive rebound, those are real weaknesses. But when you shoot twos as well as they do, they're almost at 62% from two. That's really good. It's top 10 in the nation. And they're almost top 10. They're 11th in turnover percentage. When you don't give the ball away, so you're getting shots up and you shoot twos that well, it's hard to not be a good offensive team overall, even with the other weaknesses.
Right.
Now, I will say the 3-point shooting is not a disaster. I mean, 34.7%, I believe, is what they're at right now.
34.9% as of recording.
So basically 35%. That's actually solid, but it's kind of middle of the pack-ish. And they take a ton of threes. So we're not talking anything quite on the Illinois of last season level, but I would say this, if I were looking at that team and I were a Nebraska fan, I would probably want to see more twos because it's hurting them in two ways. They're taking more shots that they don't shoot as well. And it also, I have to believe, is contributing to them not getting to the line all that often.
Sure.
So both of those things are factors, I think. Defensively, they're even a little better than they were offensively. And what's the thing we always say, the fundamental thing you look at to determine the quality of a defense is how well do they limit opponent shooting? Well, they're top 50 in both against threes and twos. Pretty good. Not elite, but pretty good.
Right.
Michigan State, but they're 49th against threes, 41st against twos. Michigan State, by contrast, 76th against threes, 50th against twos. So not as good. What's the difference? Why is Michigan State a top 10 defense and Nebraska is only a top 30 defense? Well,
rebounding.
They're okay, actually. They're 65th in defensive rebounding, which is not terrible. It's just not great. They don't foul, but the problem is they've had bad free throw luck. Teams are shooting almost 74% against them when they do get there. So this is a steady team. And honestly, I think the numbers, the statistics we've just reeled off don't do them justice, because I've watched this team play, I think, parts of 4 or 5 games. And every time I watch them, I've come away really impressed with how they look offensively. They move the ball and move men. Their movement, period, ball and man, is outstanding. They are 16th in the country in assists, percentage of field goals made that have an assist. Michigan State, who we all know emphasizes that, is second. So they're not quite at Michigan State's level, but they're damn close.
Yeah.
And it's been a big deal because if you remember, and part of the reason I picked them where I did is I felt they had an issue, didn't have an obvious answer at point guard. They still don't have a true point guard. The guys they've got handling that are doing a good job. They're not really point guards by trade. They're point guards physically. They're not point guards in terms of their game, but it hasn't mattered because everybody passes well. Everybody moves. The flow of their offense is generally very, very good. And that's made them hard for teams to guard. Illinois, who has not been as good defensively as we're used to seeing, gave up 83 against them in Champaign. Yeah. So Wisconsin gave up 90. So Nebraska can play, and that those numbers also speak to the pace they play with. They're 81st in average length of offensive possession. So not quite as fast as what we just saw with Cornell, but reasonably fast for a Big Ten team, especially. So they're going to play with pace. They're going to move. They're going to force you to have to really lock in and guard them because it's not going to be a lot of, this isn't going to look like Arkansas, where it's just, it's one-on-one, square you up, try to take your man off through. It's not that at all. They are much tougher to guard. Michigan State's going to have to deliver a really focused defensive effort in this one.
Yeah, and I guess the one advantage of not having the students there is if Nebraska wins, I think the chance of a court storming is pretty low. But I don't,
we're not going to see that. You're right.
we don't want to see it anyway. But
there would absolutely be a risk of that if students were there. I just have to believe it's that kind of game for them. Like the stakes, even at an absurdly early part of the season, it's one thing. Hey, it's great to win in Champaign. It's great to blast Wisconsin. You always love to beat your in-state rival in Creighton, all that. That's all great. None of that comes close to the idea of beating a top 10 Michigan State. It just doesn't.
Yeah, right. For sure. Also, I think, Connor Seagen, probably worth pointing out too, that he has a season-ending injury.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, I kind of half expect Nebraska to go in the portal and pull some pro in from like Europe or something like that.
Yeah.
To replace Connor Seagen.
It's funny because he was really good for them last year. He was great as a freshman at Wisconsin. Then he had some injury problems, and even once he got supposedly healthy, he wasn't very good. As a sophomore, transfers to Nebraska, was really good last year. This year, before he got hurt, and honestly, I don't know enough to know if his play was maybe right, but he was not playing well. He wasn't shooting the ball well at all. I mean, he was playing about 15 minutes a game. And where I think it has an impact is, as we say, Nebraska wants to play with pace. They're not a very deep team. So you take a Siegen away, and I'm not really sure that they've done much to replace him with anybody. I think they've rather just distributed those 15 minutes a game amongst other guys. So we're really talking about what I would expect to be an 8-man rotation, which isn't very deep by the standards of a team that plays as fast as they do.
Yeah, and you'd expect a team that's not that deep to be okay probably this time of the year, but you wonder by late February, that it starts catching up to them, especially when you start getting a league play where you're playing every 3-4 nights and you're playing tough physical teams every single time you get hit on the floor.
Right. Of course, even in an individual game, though, the challenge, I think, will be when you're facing an opponent who's more athletic than you are but wants to play fast too. Does that take more out of you even in an individual game than they're used to?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I know the two Big Ten games, Illinois and Wisconsin, both play reasonably fast. Neither one of them has they haven't played anybody who has a transition game like Michigan State.
Sure. Well, hopefully. Hopefully Michigan State keeps that.
Creighton wants to play fast too, but again, it's not Michigan State.
Yeah, right. All right, so New Year's begun or about to begin. So make sure you've got things taken care of in your house. That includes your gutters. Not very sexy, I know, not very exciting. However, they're super important to make sure that things functioning properly in your roof or in your business. Make sure you contact the Brothers Adjust Your Gutters if you think you may have a problem or just want them to clean stuff out, whatever it might be. They can take care of whatever the issue is. That's all they do. They don't do anything else. They're not going to try and sell you, new shingling or something like that. They're just going to take care of those gutters. So head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support today to get the necessary links to contact Greg or Kurt, whether you're on the east or the west side of the state of Michigan. They can take care of you. You get 10% off just mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. Contact them today. You'll be glad you did. They sponsor a player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. I will begin with the starters for Nebraska with Jamarcus Lawrence, 6'3" senior. This is second year for Hoiberg? He went to Rhode Island.
It's his third year. He's one of these guys that we see from time to time. 2 years at Nebraska under Hoiberg, transferred to Rhode Island last year. Now he's back.
Right. Oh, the world's so weird. It's hard to keep track. So he's averaging almost 9.5 points a game. He leads the team in assists at 4 a game. Commits about 2 turnovers a game. So this is kind of your point about actual point guards. He is shooting really well this year. He's shooting 46, 41, 65 from the line. It's not too good, but a lot of his shots are from deep. And as you mentioned, he's the one who had the 3 to beat Illinois a couple weeks ago.
He's having a really nice season. And honestly, he was a guy who was not a super highly rated recruit. I think he's from Southern California, if I remember correctly. But he was pretty good, especially his sophomore year at Nebraska. He was on that team that made the tournament. And so I thought it was disappointing for them that they lost him last year. Well, now he's back and, no surprise, he's playing pretty damn well. Shooting the ball very well. He's tied for the team lead in assists at 4 a game, and he's got a 2-to-1 ratio. So as I mentioned, he's not a pure point guard, but he's not an embarrassment out there either. So they're managing to hold it together, but frankly, part of the reason they are is they share. It looks, they're not running a Bo Ryan offense, far from it, but the way it functions, or Bob Knight, let's say, when he was running, pure motion stuff at Indiana, where the ball isn't always in the hands of the quarterback.
Right.
It's just playmaking is distributed because everybody's moving constantly, setting picks, moving, the ball's moving. So they don't rely on just one guy. But I think that Lawrence has had about as good a year as they could have hoped for. The shooting especially is a big deal. I mean, for a team that puts it up from out there as much as they do, to have a 41% shooter who's high volume, that's a big deal. Yeah. He's a guy Michigan State's got to respect.
And then we come to Sam Hoiberg, a guy who I remember, I think I was watching the game when he first came in because he was a walk-on. He's as a freshman. And of course, obviously the son of Fred Hoiberg, the head coach. And he came in and I think they had some injuries or something. And so he sort of had to play some spot minutes and he played really well. And it was, he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he was holding his own out there, made a couple plays, like a couple steals, maybe assist or two. And he sort of just has worked his way and to been a functional player from a walk-on stats, which I don't think anyone expected. Probably not even his dad in summer levels. I mean, I don't know. But so he's now a senior, obviously. He is averaging almost 9 points a game, 4 assists per game, less than 1 turnover a game. So really good assist turnover ratio. 4.5 rebounds a game for a guy who's, he's just the ultimate try hard guy. Maybe it's not fair to say, but he does not strike me as super athletic, but a guy who's 100%, 110% effort out on the floor, shooting 56, 39, and 68. So he has made himself very functional.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, 2 years ago, he was an important part of that team that went to the tournament. And last year, he was an important part of a team that should have gone to the tournament, but for a late season fade. So he's been part of some good basketball teams, and it's not an accident. In other words, part of the reason they're good is he's part of the team.
Right.
I think Michigan State fans have an interesting view on him because, of course, his older brother, Jack, was a preferred walk-on here, who then eventually transferred for his senior year. I think was it UT Arlington? It was a school in Texas that he transferred to and was a scholarship guy for his 5th year. But he was pretty good as a walk-on. If you would remember, he'd get in games and at garbage time, but you would see him look functional.
He's like a Nick Sanders. Like he looks okay. Like he's, can hold his own for a minute.
Yeah, I would say maybe a little better than Nick even.
Yeah, probably so.
But that's kind of what I expected out of Sam. And I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think that's what the book was. That's what the expectation was. But he has just taken it to another level. And it's really 3 things, I think. One is, let's understand, he's not just some guy off the street. When you're playing high major basketball and you shoot 56% overall from the floor, 39% from 3, you have some skill. 4 assists to 1 turnover a game.
Yeah.
You've got some skill. Okay. So it's that he has some skill. Then it's that he's, and this plays into all the cliches, but he's a coach's son, right? Yeah. So he plays smart basketball. We mentioned that play where they beat Illinois at the buzzer. He had a lane, or he had room to get into the middle of the lane on that last possession. And a lot of guys, I would say probably most guys, would have put the shot up. And he could have gotten the shot up. It would have been semi-contested, but he had a floater available to him. He didn't do that. He kicked to a wide open shooter on the arc even though it was further out, I would say it was a higher quality shot because it was wide open and it was in rhythm. It was a very, very smart play to make, and Lawrence delivered and they win the game. So he's a smart player. The third thing, though, and I think this might be the most important part when you put it together with the first 2, you said try hard guy. He just plays with energy and a motor that doesn't stop.
Yep.
I mean, that's how a guy who's 6 feet tall grabs 4.5 rebounds a game. It's the only way.
Yeah.
And credit to him. I mean, you talk about a self-made player. This is it. This is the guy. So very impressed. Izzo mentioned him in a press conference the other day. They're not even to Nebraska yet. And he was talking about him. So he's a big deal. I mean, and again, I don't think Sam is really a pure point guard either, but he's doing a pretty good job masquerading as one some of the time.
Yeah.
So he and Lawrence giving them better guard play than I thought they'd get heading into the season. And that's a big part of the reason why they're undefeated.
Absolutely. And for all those of us who are undersized, we cheer on Hoiberg when he's not going up against our team. So now we're going to move into a little bit more size here for Nebraska. I almost said Iowa. And that's because it's Bryce Sanford, former Iowa player. He's a younger brother for Peyton Sanford, who graduated last year. So he's 6'7" junior. He is averaging 16.3 points a game, 4.8 rebounds a game, shooting 49, 38, and 90. Still a real heavy and outside of the arc, about 60% of his attempts. 31 assists to just 7 turnovers this year as well.
I mean, you've seen Iowa much more than I have. Would you agree that he's gotten better every year? It's been steady improvement, right?
Yes. I mean, he was significantly better his sophomore year than he was his freshman year.
Right. He was more highly rated than his older brother, but I thought he was kind of disappointing his freshman year.
I felt like the difference between him and his brother is that he was a little bit lower energy. That was like the one difference.
Well, his brother was another high motor guy, so that's
exactly
not
right.
hard to be. But I thought last season he made real strides, and this year I think he's even better. And Nebraska is getting the benefit of it. It's a nice piece to have a 6'7" guy with Big Ten experience under his belt coming in and giving you yet another shooting threat. He doesn't do necessarily as much of the other things at a super high level, but as a scorer, you can't complain about 16 points a night and
No.
And whatever he is near 40% from three. It's pretty good.
And then a sort of intriguing player, 6'10", 240-pound junior, Burke Biancatel. I never pronounced his name right. He's averaging 8 points a game, 6.7 rebounds a game, which puts him second on the team. Shooting 44, 19, and 66. He will occasionally he looks good, even though he misses a lot of those threes. You think, there's a better shooter locked in there, and he hasn't quite delivered on that yet. But I would worry about it happening one game.
This was the story on him since he started his career at UCLA, and now he's in his second year at Nebraska.
Right.
He came from Turkey, obviously. The story on him was, this is a Euro stretch big. He's shooting 27% from three over his career. So it's never shown up.
Right.
That said, I think he's getting better. It's not as obvious in the statistics as it is with Price Sanford, but he's giving them a real rebounding presence. He gives them size, which they can use, and he can score some. He's just not the stretch component that they maybe thought he was capable of being, at least not yet. But, solid guy. It's important in this conference, as we're all going to find out again. You got to have multiple guys with size. I think it's really tough to win if you don't. And that's why I think teams like Iowa and Indiana, for as much talent and offensive flash as they have, are going to run into some problems, especially against the upper echelon of the league, because they don't have that size to combat it. Nebraska does.
Right. Yeah, well, that's largely the next guy we'll talk about. So Rink Mast, 6'10", 250-pound senior. He was injured out and missed, I think, the entire season, or almost maybe he may played a game or two.
He missed the entire year. Yep.
Yeah. Averaging 17 points a game, 6.8 rebounds a game, shooting 53, 40, 81, also with 3 assists per game. Does have a couple of turnovers, but not too surprising. But he's a guy who's he's definitely a stretch 5. He looks even better this year than he did before he was injured
2 years ago.
And I think he is, I think he's one of the largely one of the reasons that they are so much better this year than they were last year.
The single biggest,
most obvious thing to say.
The single biggest by far, figuratively and literally. Last year, they kind of had to do it by committee. They had brought in a couple of transfers who were supposed to back him up. And then those guys ended up, and they did okay. They competed, but it wasn't the same. They should have been a tournament team last year, even without him. With him, they absolutely would have been. I have no doubt in my mind. And you're seeing the difference this year. He's really important for them in a lot of ways, not least of which is that he gives them an outlet for ball handling and decision-making on offense that they wouldn't otherwise have. And on a team without a true point guard, that matters. So they can run offense through him from time to time. And he's a little bit more turnover prone than the rest of their team, which generally does a very good job valuing the ball. But hey, anytime your 5-man is positive in assist to turnover ratio, that's pretty good. And he's 3-2. So they'll take it. But yeah, he's their best player. He's the biggest difference maker between last year and this year. No doubt about it. And he's going to be a tough guy to deal with for Michigan State. No question.
And then moving on to the reserves, and of course, this is a very short bench in many respects because of the loss of Connor Sejan. Bringing Braden Frazier, 6'7", 215-pound freshman. He's averaging 11.3 points a game, 4.1 rebounds a game, plays about 21 minutes, so decent amount. Shooting 52, 35, and 84. And like many of these players, most of his shots, or at least majority, are outside the arc.
Huge deal for them because, again, this is a team without a lot of depth. And if he hadn't emerged, it would have been an even worse situation. Having him gives them a high-quality sixth man. It's not even just his statistical contributions, but the fact that he can contribute both on the perimeter as a bigger wing or as an undersized four-man. So he can play a few different positions. Big surprise because, he was not a ballyhooed recruit. And to be honest, Hoiberg has not really done very much of that. He's gotten some guys in the portal who are well regarded over his time in Nebraska, but he hasn't really hit the jackpot in terms of high school recruiting yet. But Frager is a big time addition, even though he wasn't billed as one. And he's another guy that it's a nice combination to have when you've got somebody who can shoot the ball, who can pass it, who can play a few different positions, solid defensively, but also plays with a high motor. He's another high motor guy. This team has a lot of those. And you're going to be, if you haven't seen them play yet, you're going to be struck by that, by how hard they play.
Then we have Jared Garcia, 6'8", 230 pounds, senior transfer from Tulsa. He averages 4.5 points a game, 2.6 rebounds a game, plays only about 10 minutes, shoots 38, 22, and 86.
Yeah, not huge contributions, but another important guy because, for as much versatility as Frager has, he's not capable of being a five-man.
Right, exactly.
So Garcia is big enough that he can eat up a few minutes a game at the five or at the four, but regardless, in the post and give them a Big Ten caliber body physically. So he matters for that reason.
And finally, one of the backup guards is Cale Jacobson, 6'4", junior guard. Was largely riding the bench the first couple of seasons. He's playing this year, averaging a little over 4 points a game, almost 3.5 rebounds a game, plays almost 20 minutes, shooting 51, 30, and 53.
Yeah. And, credit to him, the 3-point shooting is mediocre at best, but he's still shooting 51% overall from the floor. So he's not falling in love with that.
Right.
Big step forward, was not any kind of automatic that he would be working his way into the rotation after he really didn't play very much his first 2 years. But here we are, 19 minutes a game, playing on the wing and delivering solid, if unspectacular, minutes.
So I think it's fairly obvious, but who do you have as a player Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter?
There's no question. It's Rink Mast. I mean,
Mast.
We're normally talking about guards and frequently point guards in this segment, but in this case, in part because he is a playmaker. He's one of their playmakers too, but he's their best player. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And if I remember correctly, he was a big factor in them beating Michigan State 2 years ago. If memory serves, I think they won a game at Breslin, if I remember correctly, and he was a big part of that. So he's done some damage before, but he's just a very, very good player. And in a league that has a lot of good big men in it, he's one of the best.
I try and block out Michigan State losses, especially teams like Nebraska, with that I go witness and hit person at the Breslin Center. But I think you're right about Rink. And I think he came from Missouri Valley too, if I recall. I think he
came from Bradley, right? And he was
I was thinking it was either Bradley or Valpo. I couldn't remember which one.
I believe it's Bradley, and he was real. I remember him being really good. It was not a big surprise that he was effective coming over from Bradley. I mean, looking at his tenure, I mean, this was a guy who was shot 35% from three his last year at Bradley, 56% from the floor.
I think he was like runner-up player of the year for Missouri Valley.
He was really good. So, not a surprise that he's playing at a high level. But definitely a big part of the key. And I am correct. They beat Michigan State in December. of that.
Oh, that game.
Your horrible start. Yeah.
Yes.
And Rink Mast, I'm wrong. He only had 8 points, but he did have 14 rebounds and 6 assists. So he did his damage. So I'll live with that being mostly correct.
I think that was the infamous rant game that I think you went off, saying that this is the year that Michigan State wasn't going to make the tournament, which at that point it certainly looked like that might be the case.
They were 4-5 and 0-2.
Yeah, they were a disaster.
Loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was not at the game, which made it, I don't know, maybe a little better, I guess. Not sure. All right. So, but place where I will definitely, I'm in the game now with Who Cleans the Glass Best, brought to you by Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Currently, Rod has a lead 7-5, but I've closed it up to 2 now. I'm within just a bucket. But if you want to make sure you have your winners are washed properly and thoroughly, head over to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. You can get an estimate, of course, through a link through our support page. As always, at the Final Four is on the schedule.com/support. You get 15% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate through Troy. And depending when you're listening to this, if you get it, if you try and schedule a window cleaning before the end of the year, you still can get that. You get an extra discount in addition to the 15%. So then you can schedule that sometime before the end of February. So you got a couple of months. So they're out there right now. And the weather, it doesn't matter what the weather is, no matter how much snow you got outside or whatever is going on. If you're anywhere within the Grand Rapids area or Grand Rapids adjacent, it's a very large region. Troy and Seam will head out, especially if you got a business you want to start. Try and get on the schedule where you get it twice a year, which is what they recommend. They have, like I said, a very large region, and they can take care of you. Head on over and contact Troy and see what he can do, because he can take care of you really well. So you get to pick first. I got to pick first last time. So who do you have in the snake draft?
Jackson Kohler.
Shocking. So it's very interesting. I'm going to obviously go with Cooper. I think you're crazy not to do that, but I think I'm going to just stick with Carr. I really like what he's been doing. I think they're going to call on him quite a bit. He's going to have to try and neutralize Sanford. So he's going to play a lot of minutes. And I think he'll have a lot of opportunities to get some rebounds this game.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little bit off the board here.
Oh, Nick Sanders.
Nebraska, because not that off the board, because Nebraska is a heavy 3 shooting team. I'm going to bet on maybe more long rebounds than we're used to. I'm going to go with Jordan Scott.
Yeah.
Rather than Cam Ward, rather than Jesse McCullough. I mean, we're in this phase now where the first 2 guys are always obvious, but after that, you really do have a group of about 4 players that I think game to game could be very different. So I'm going to go with Jordan Scott to join Jackson Kohler.
Well, and last game, when the Cornell game, I had 16 of 10 for Kohler and 6 for Carr, but you could have cobbled together a 2-man team and been pretty competitive and close had I had picked Carr or had to pick Kohler and someone else. So having Kohler certainly gives you the leg up, but it does not guarantee a victory generally, I think, at this point. And yeah, it's a total gamble if Scott's going to be a guy who's going to help you or not.
Today's an obvious example of that, right? Like he doesn't play much in the first half due to foul trouble, and yet he still ends up with a double-digit game,
Yeah,
so,
crazy.
It's a big leg up.
So impressive, too, for a guy who,
the only chance,
from an athletic standpoint, can't get up there.
The only chance you've got when you're not on the Kohler day is if Carson Cooper has something that he's done a few times this year, which is a really big rebounding game. If Carson Cooper can get you 8 or 9, then you're in it. Then the secondary guys will decide it,
right.
Usually.
Well,
unless Jackson's just going crazy.
Yeah. Or, I think Carson had 15 in a game. I think that was the game that you had him, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's got to get lucky here a little bit. All right. But one place you don't have to get lucky is at Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing will take care of you, and there's no luck involved. Just head over to nudgeprinting.com. You can get any sort of thing you need there that's Spartan apparel, whatever the sport is, whether it's a coat, a sweatshirt, a t-shirt. They've got hats there as well, like vintage logos. They've got the stickers for the wall. I can always forget. I always blank on what those are called.
Fat
so
heads.
I apologize. Thank you.
Fat heads.
Thank you, fat heads. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always want to say wall drug, because I'm thinking of Walls, and I don't know why I think Wall Drug. It's like I just not like I spent a lot of time in South Dakota going to Wall Drug, but yeah. So head on over to Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com, 20% off. You use the code for checkout which is TFFINOTS. It gets you 20% off. And at some point we'll have a new contest for Nudge Printing, I think. So Nudge obviously sponsors the 5 keys of the game. And the first one is the road. Obviously, this is the first big road game that Michigan State's had. Yes, they played Penn State, but there's 3 dozen fans there. This is a totally different environment. Nebraska, we've said, this is a great environment. It's great players going up against each other. And anyway, the great thing about it is I think they have a lot of opportunity to be really, really good. And so that's the fact that they're so competitive now. They have everything else like is going for them. And so it's a tough road environment, even though it's been Nebraska, but it's sort of like it was a tough road environment, but it was just Rutgers. And then Rutgers was suddenly competitive and very good. And so then that became a really tough place to play.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the more, I don't know if I want to call it underrated, because that's not exactly capturing it. Let's call it a sleeping giant of a home court environment.
Yeah.
I think, because it's pretty good no matter what. So if you're actually giving them, look, in Nebraska, just being good enough to be in the NCAA tournament passes is a big deal anyway. But this is, at least for the moment, this looks beyond that. So I would expect that it's going to be a very difficult kind of challenge. And so it's different than Penn State, for sure. I think one thing that would be very advisable, always is in those kind of games, is get off to a good start. Don't get down early and let things just kind of turn into an avalanche. You want to steady yourself, and you want to maybe take the crowd out of it a little bit, at least not let them get going to the point that it just starts to feed, the team starts to feed on the crowd and vice versa. And then you look up and you're down 15 at the, under 12.
Right. Exactly.
The good thing for Michigan State is that, this is a program that's used to this. It's a team that's been in these kind of games with a lot of veterans who have been in it. So you would hope and expect that they'll handle it decently, but it is a challenge that they haven't yet seen. They're going to see it some more for sure over the next 3 months, but they haven't seen it yet this year. Not exactly this.
On neutral floors, at least, where, North Carolina hit them with a big run and they came back and they didn't seem to panic. And then even at Penn State, you never got the impression they were panicking. Yeah, things were working, but they seemed to just weather all those storms okay. So, I mean, I'm encouraged by that, but this will be a different environment just because the fans and sort of the I guess just like you said, the ability for things to just sort of snowball, it's definitely gonna be a little bit higher with this venue.
Right.
Second key to the game, the boards. It's always important for Michigan State with, their elite rebounding team, both in the offensive and defensive end. Nebraska, not so much. And so anytime you can get an edge, especially on the road, you definitely want to try and find extra ways to score or steal possessions.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is, as we said, Nebraska is pretty much, especially by Big Ten standards, a non-existent offensive rebounding team. And they're not great or even good on the defensive end. Michigan State, after tonight, number 7 in the country in offensive rebounding, number 1 in defensive rebounding. So, and I said it before the Cornell game, but it's still true after that one. Michigan State is, for my money, the best rebounding team in America.
Uh-huh.
I think when you take both ends into account, hard to say that anybody's better. Nebraska is a long way from that. In fact, I saw something yesterday from Fred Hoiberg where he said that rebounding is the number one thing he needed his team to improve upon. And I think that's something that comes from a guy with the experience of coaching in this league a few years. Yeah, he knows if they want to remain where they are in terms of, if they want to turn the perception of where they are right now into the reality, of being an upper tier Big Ten team, it's really hard to do that if you can't at least hold your own. And, this is probably going to be the toughest challenge they have in that respect, but it's not the last one, not by a long shot.
Oh, no, there are plenty of
Illinois
teams that are
rebounds
good.
well. Michigan rebounds well. I mean, on and on and on. And Nebraska, it's a problem if you can't, you'd be shocked if they get a ton of second chances. But the real challenge for them is how many second chances can they limit Michigan State to? That's where the rubber's going to hit the road. And in any Big Ten game, especially with two teams that want to believe that they can contend, the margins tend to be very small. I saw Mark D'Antonio yesterday talking about how he felt even this year's Michigan State football team. If you remember, he always used to have that line of, you gotta win those inches. The games are decided by a matter of inches usually. And that's very true in basketball too. The margins in the Big Ten, especially among good teams, very fine.
Yeah.
And so if you can't control the glass or at least hold your own, it's hard to win those margins in the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have a large deficiency in anything, you have to make it up on something else.
Yeah.
And
they do, they won't turn the ball over very much. So they help themselves in that way. But
right.
You're not going to, if you're Nebraska, there's such a tiny percentage chance that they get a decent amount of second chances on offensive rebounds, right? So that's not going to happen. So you've got to figure out at the other end, you feel pretty good about your ability to limit Michigan State shooting success based on what you've done this season, but can you stop those second chances when they miss?
And the third key to the game is perimeter defense. Nebraska is not a fantastic 3-point shooting team. They're just a little bit under 35% as we're recording this. However, they do shoot a lot of them. And so, you're home for them, and, you'd hate to get it again. Suddenly they go for like 6 for 9, and suddenly they've got a huge working margin in the first half or something like that.
Yeah. And I was really encouraged by most of the second half against Cornell, because that's an elite 3-point shooting team that runs good stuff to get looks. And MSU, until those last 4 minutes where it was garbage time, shut them down. They just shut the water off and did so in a way that they weren't as vulnerable to drive-bys or back cuts the way they were in the first half. So that was encouraging. They got to do it all over again. Nebraska's only a decent 3-point shooting team, but as you said, they're home. If they get off to a good start, crowd gets behind them, you never know. Sometimes emotions can play into that and the team gets on a roll. So for MSU, you just want to see them continue doing what they've done for most of this year, which is do a solid job in contesting and limiting high quality looks.
Exactly.
Teams want to take threes, they're going to take them. But what you can do is limit the caliber of shot they're getting.
And the fourth key to the game is transition. Obviously important thing for Michigan State. There are two big, huge advantages, hopefully, are one of the boards, and the second is transition to try and get to score on a pretty decent defense. If you can get some easy buckets, obviously helpful.
Yeah. And I think that's, there's two things that I look at as keys to this. Well, three things that are keys to this game from an offensive point of view. This is a team, when you look at the basics, which is limit opponents' threes, limit opponents' twos in terms of their success rate, Nebraska checks out as a pretty good team. So we already talked about rebounding. Michigan State, at least on paper, should have opportunities to get second chances. You got to cash in on some of those. A second way they can help themselves offensively in this game is by continuing what they did against Cornell, and that's really pushing tempo. We talked about it earlier. Nebraska wants to play with some pace. Now, the fact that they don't do much in the way of offensive rebounding would suggest that, and Fred Hoiberg's fairly, for an opposing coach, intimate knowledge of Michigan State's program, given that he spent a decent part of 1 year before he took the Nebraska job hanging out around Michigan State staff. So and he had a son play there. So he knows what Michigan State wants to do. I would expect their floor balance to generally be pretty good. I don't think they're going to gift Michigan State with chances.
Right.
But that doesn't matter. You've still got to be pushing. You have to be insistent in trying to create those easy opportunities because, again, win the inches, game of fine margins. If you get, say 14 points in transition versus 8, that could be all the difference between a win or a loss. And against this team where that they're going to do a pretty good job probably in limiting your shooting success, you need to find other ways to score. So that's a big part of them along with offensive rebounding.
Right. And of course, the important thing to point out with Michigan State, the transition, they're going to have to manufacture that more than it's not going to get a lot of, you wouldn't expect them to get a lot of turnovers, live ball turnovers, since Nebraska tends to value the ball. So you're going to have to do it off of clean defensive rebounds and then just kind of push the ball when you can. So the fifth key to the game is the threes. So very interesting. Michigan State was, we'll say they were dreadful from three to start the year. The first, they were I think 358th or something out of 364 teams.
Yes.
Maybe 2 games into the year.
What are they now?
They are, I just had it up.
Just
at least
give me a guess. Torvik. Don't look. Give me a guess.
Oh, so I'm going to guess they are probably 70th.
59th.
Okay. Yeah, because they were like 94th.
They're at 37. They're just under shade under 37%.
So
and here's the other thing. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember, part of what we've talked about is the threes don't matter as much at Michigan State than a lot of other places, like Nebraska, for example, because they don't take all that many of them. Well, that's still kind of true, but the attempts have gone up as their success has improved. They are now at number 288 in 3-point attempts as a percentage of overall field goal attempts. That's the first time, to my knowledge, they've been sub 300 there. So they're rather inside the top 300 rather than outside of it. So that tells you that it is, and it's still, look, 288 is 288. They're not going to put up 35 threes. God help us. But the interesting thing to me, and we talked about this in the post game at Cornell, what was great to see that performance is that it came at the Breslin, where they haven't consistently been as good. But you know what Michigan State is shooting from 3 on the season in games away from Breslin. So that means the one true road game they played and all the neutral site games.
Yeah.
What are they shooting?
They're 45%.
45 for 100. Exactly.
Yeah.
Outstanding. That's Denzel Valentine's senior year good. Now, is that going to keep up on the road all year? Well, I hope so. I kind of doubt it stays at that strong a level, but it does suggest that at least so far, this team has not given you 2 things. One, their track record away from home gives you no indication that they're likely to get rattled. Although, again, this is going to be probably the toughest environment they've played in.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, that is true is what we were talking about a few moments ago. In general, this team is just shooting the 3 much, much, much better than it was.
Yeah.
And it's multiple guys. It's not
so I got them all here. I was going to go over them if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So taking out the Waltons, who are both perfect 100%, they're 1 for 1 each. You got McCullough at 60%. So he's 6 for 10. So low volume, but look good. Ugochukwu is 13 for 26. So he's 50%. So that's still not super high volume, but that's, about 2 a game. Sanders, of course, is 50%. But then you have Jackson Kohler is 47%. Kurt Tang is 38%. Fears is now back up to 35%. He was down to 31 before the Cornell game. Trey Fort is almost up to 30% now, and he's 13 for 44. And then Jordan Scott is 8 for 31. Carr is 5 for 23. And then Cooper is yet to hit one, along with Wojcik. But a lot of guys, pretty good volume. Obviously they're shooting better.
Go ahead.
No,
I'm going to cherry pick on Jordan Scott because I think he started out 0 for his first 13.
I think that's probably right.
So that would make him 8 for 18 cents.
So
he's been much better. I mean, tonight I think he was 1 for 4.
Yeah.
But he's looked much better. I mean, the confidence, he's not hesitating. He gets open looks, it goes up. And the results justify that, I think he's been really good. So, but you illustrate the point. It's not like this is on the backs of one guy or two guys even.
Right.
It's multiple guys that are 35% plus, and you can say, well, yeah, Jesse McCullough, 6 for 10, it's low volume. But you know what? He's playing enough now. Probably a reasonable chance he's going to stick a 3 in at least one in any game he plays. Right. And it's just coming from a lot of different places. And if this team, Trey Fort and Cohen Carr, but especially Trey Fort, if he gets it going, and tonight was a step in the right direction. I saw Izzo's post game. He said that against Cornell, he said that he felt that's the best game Trey has played at MSU, which we talked about in the post game as well. So I'm glad we were correct, or at least in agreement with the head coach. But he looked confident, and he always looks confident. But this was a guy that felt like he was in the flow. Sometimes
he looked comfortable.
Sometimes this year, he's the one guy who's not taking shots always within the flow of the offense, right? But tonight it was there, and he wasn't settling. He wasn't settling for deep jumpers. He wasn't always successful, but he's trying to get to the basket, which was nice to see. But if he gets going and all of a sudden he becomes a guy that's in the mid 30s, well, now you're really talking, because we've got a couple of guys here, Divine most notably, who are surpassing all expectations as a shooter. And Jackson Kohler, I think we thought he'd be good. I don't think we thought he'd be knocking on the door of 50%.
No.
So, Jeremy Fears with a good night against Cornell, back up to 35%. And to me, that's a good enough number. If he ends the season at 35% with the kind of volume we would expect to see, you're going to be happy with that, So,
well, you don't see people backing off on him like you did last year.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you want, right? Yeah.
So this is the thing. Nebraska has, and it's why it's maybe even more important in this game. Nebraska has been doing a great job, not just in terms of limiting opponents' success from 3, but holding down, or rather giving up a ton of 3-point attempts and holding the percentage down. Now, part of the reason they're doing that is I think their 2-point defense has been really solid. We talked maybe a game or two ago about this, how there's a heavy correlation in the modern era, between shot block percentage and strong 2-point defense, right?
Right.
Nebraska is an anomaly in that way. They're a good 2-point shooting defense with almost no rim protection. So what does that mean? Well, that means they're doing a pretty good job in denying dribble penetration, and their bigs are being active enough that they're taking up space, they're walling up, they're not getting taken advantage of on the blocks. Teams aren't getting a lot done in the post against them. So that is playing a role, I think, in the 3-point success. It's a lot like MSU, right? We talked about it second half of the Cornell game. Part of the reason Cornell was 1 for 16 for most of that half was they weren't getting any looks from 2. So they had to take shots that were semi there, which were generally pretty well guarded from 3, and your percentages on those is going to be low. So that's the way Nebraska wants to play. If you're Michigan State, look, the Michigan State presents a different kind of challenge than anything Nebraska has seen to date. Even Illinois. I think Michigan State's a better team than Illinois. So it's going to be a different kind of challenge for Nebraska to limit MSU from 2, but MSU's not a great 2-point shooting team. They've been a little better the last couple games, but it's still a weak point in an otherwise pretty good offense. So all of that, what it adds up to, in my view, is MSU probably needs to be at least decent from 3. I don't know they need to be 45%, but they've got to show up. I think
Yeah.
it's, if they have like a 4 for 21 kind of game, I think it's going to be tough to win.
Yeah, I think one of the things when it comes to 2-point defense is not only is it, to your point, if you're not going to be a shot blocking team, you want to have people take tough twos, which is, outside away from the rim. Right. And so that's how you also have a better, when you're defending the two, much better, obviously, if people are shooting for 20 feet away versus 2.
It is remarkable. And nobody's talking about it, but it stands out to me, Fred Hoiberg, when he was at Iowa State, where he had a lot of success, they were an offensive team first, last, and always. I mean, that's what they were, and if you look at his history, I just want to go back over this as we're talking. So right now, they're the number 26 defense in the country, right?
Right.
And pretty good. Last season, they were 41st, which was pretty solid. The year before that, 43, pretty solid. 69th the year before that. But then you get some terrible, like you go back to the 22 season, they were 178, which for a Big Ten team is awful.
Yeah.
They were 40th in 21, so they were okay then. And then his first year, 152. But I think he's found a different level of defense in the last couple of years. And it's impressive because he's not doing it in any kind of gambling sort of way. It's just solid, square you up, as you said, try to make you take tough shots you don't want to take, which is, a lot of what Michigan State does.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You want to avoid layups, right? Or if you, that's pretty much, and if they get there, that you want to make sure you're blocking them or making those difficult. So, yeah. I don't know. Any further thoughts about the Nebraska game?
Well, just, we've talked about how big it is from the Nebraska side, right? And I think all of that is absolutely true. From the Michigan State perspective, it's big too. I mean, make no mistake. You want to contend in this conference. And when you are sitting here turning the calendar to 2026 and you enter the new year unbeaten in the league, top 10 team, your only loss was a narrow one to Duke in a game you feel like you probably should have won.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan State has received decent attention, and none of this stuff matters except to fans. But I think Michigan State has received decent attention nationally. They're certainly getting credit for being better yet again than some expected them to be.
The pundits.
Not really us, but
no.
But let's be honest, the bulk of the glare of the spotlight has gone to Michigan because of the way they've just obliterated teams and that they're undefeated, and to Purdue, who, even though they have kind of an embarrassing home court loss, much worse than the one Michigan State took, they're still Purdue. They were still a preseason number one choice in a lot of places, and still a very, very good team. So MSU is, if you can be a top 10 team and still be sort of under the radar a little bit, I think they would qualify nationally, media attention, not anything that really matters, but just from that perspective. So I do think Nebraska has started to capture some national attention too, as you will when you're undefeated. You win a game like they did against Illinois, all of that. If Michigan State goes in and wins this game at Nebraska, I think you will start to see a lot more talk about, is Izzo doing it again?
Yeah.
I think it will have that. It will be taken to mean that. We don't know yet if it really means that. I think Nebraska is really good. I don't know if I believe that they're one of the top 4 teams. We'll see. They could prove me wrong. I think they're definitely a tournament team. I'm not sure if I believe they're a top 4 team in this league. But we'll find out. And I think from an MSU perspective, you go on the road and you win a game like this against that team, that would be a very big statement on top of the multiple statements they've already made this year.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, one last point. That would also be, if you're getting caught up, as we're not even in January yet, in thinking about seeding, that's one that if Nebraska is at least, say, a top 6 team in the Big Ten, which I definitely think they can be, winning in their gym would be a nice one to have in your it'd be another. It's going to be. They've already got 4 quad 1 wins. MSU. That would be a 5th, and I think it's likely to remain that.
I would think so too. Yeah, especially it's a road game. It's hard to imagine Nebraska collapsing. I was just going to say, I suspect that Nebraska will probably be favored. We don't, as we're recording this, we don't yet have odds. They usually come out a day or 2 before the game, but they'll probably be a 1 or 2 point favorite to the opening line. Would be my guess, just with the metrics.
I can tell you. You bear with me. And
then while you're looking at
Ken Palm usually does a pretty good job of mirroring what Vegas is. So as of, we're 4 days out from that game as we're recording this. Right now, Nebraska would be a 2-point favorite.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Bartorvik, and they have as a 1-point favorite. So usually Vegas is somewhere around there. So maybe it'll be 1.5, right?
Anywhere from 1 to 2, 1.5, 2.
But I guess the other thing too about that is looking at the rest of the schedule going until the Michigan game on the 30th at home. I mean, you've got USC, Northwestern home, and Indiana at home, then the Northwest trip to Washington, Oregon, and then at Rutgers. I mean, it's, you win this game. It's not inconceivable that I think you look through and you think you should probably win all the rest of the games until you face Michigan.
Yeah.
So
you can't ever count.
I know it's a long ways away
in the Big Ten, but you're right. You're right. You're going to be favored in every other game you play.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right
after
about
that.
Yeah. And look,
after that
Northwest trip looks a lot less daunting than it did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
Washington has not been great, and they've got some talent, but they're struggling to put it together. And Oregon's been a disaster. So that's maybe not as daunting as it looked in October. The home games are all games that you feel like you damn well ought to win at Breslin. They go to Rutgers. Yeah, this Rutgers team, Jesus, if you don't beat them. So you're right. I mean, it's absurdly early to talk about this, but it is possible. It is possible that, and Michigan's got a similar story, by the way. They're not really challenged. The game at Breslin is the first one that you can say that's a challenge. It could be, we've had a few big ones, not a lot, because frankly, Michigan hasn't been good consistently enough over the Izzo era. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But there have been some. There were a handful,
for sure.
handful during the Beeline years. I think last year certainly felt that way, even though Michigan State was clear-cut the better team. Because Michigan was kind of in it, down the stretch. The games happened late. This one's coming a little bit earlier, but boy, with the hype machine rolling in Ann Arbor, and if Michigan State wins this one against Nebraska and they take care of business in these other games they'll be favored in, you could be setting up for one of the more hyped Michigan State games we've ever seen. I mean, there have been some others, but this would be right up there.
Yeah, it'd be for sure if that were to occur, that'd be a top 5.
And I'm going to call my shot. I'm going to call. I don't do predictions very often. I unfortunately said if Michigan State sticks with this rotation, I think they're going to get beat at Nebraska. I hope I'm wrong about that.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to call my shot, regardless of what happens in Lincoln. Michigan State's beating Michigan at Breslin. Book it. Count on it. That collection of yahoos has not seen what that environment is going to be like on January 30th. And I've seen this movie way too many times.
I love it. All right. Well, we'll wrap it there. We'll be back live after the Nebraska game, which is a late game. I think it's like a 9:00 game. So we'll be up late. And we'll come to you right after the game, because of course I'm not going to have to get back from the game. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.